Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Now we're doing something that I like to do every international break, and that is reviewing my Prem predictions. So you can go back on the channel, you can see what I predicted before, and you can see where I think things are going right now. Obviously, in my past previous predictions, I have said Arsenal will win the league, and I've had United doing well up the table. As you can see, it's been an interesting season so far. Obviously, wow, Crystal Palace have conceded 9 goals as well. That is not spoken about enough this season on their defensive capabilities there. But yeah, let's get into it. Obviously, Wolves are about to win a game, and we're getting into that first one. I think you're going to see a Burnley-Chelsea 0-0. I think. Oh, and let me just rejig my system here, because I've got like a bit of a jig going on, and I need my trusty keyboard. I think Bournemouth beat West Ham 3-0 next week, and I think Brighton do edge that win over Brentford for me. Fulham get a draw with Sunderland. Sunderland playing really well, but you know what? I could easily see that 1-0 happening, to be honest, to Sunderland. Liverpool, this Forest team have been looking good, but I think Liverpool can just get the win there. I think Wolves coming back after the international break, new town under manager, get a draw with Palace there. I'm saying that Palace have not seen many goals out of that. 1-1. No, I just can't see this Wolves team scoring it. No, penalty or something like that. Yeah, 1-1. Newcastle and City 1-1. I know Newcastle have been playing really poor right now, but I think City haven't been as gleaming as people will say. And Leeds beating Villa 2-1 at home, massive one for them. Arsenal beating Tottenham 3-0, and United beating Everton 3-0. Puts us on a good trajectory. Week after, Sunderland and Bournemouth drawing 1-1. Yes. Brentford beating Burnley, no doubt about that one. Leeds getting beat by City there. Everton holding Newcastle to a 0-0. Spurs beating Fulham. Palace drawing United. Villa beating this Wolves team. I think the Wolves team is going to be dog. Forest beating Brighton, a big win for them there. And then West Ham getting beat by Liverpool, whilst actually no, this West Ham team drawing Liverpool. Liverpool not impressing me too much, and Arsenal getting that 1-0 win over Chelsea there in a big game for them. Everton getting beat 2-0 by Bournemouth. Fulham getting a goal against City, but not enough. Newcastle finding a bit of form against the Spurs team that's not finding a bit of form. Brighton beating Villa there. Arsenal beating Brentford. We see Burnley and Palace in a 1-0 win for Palace. We're going to see Wolves get a win over Forest there, and start turning their season around. Liverpool beating Sunderland. Leeds and Chelsea in a 2-2 draw, and then United beating West Ham. Another win for them on the road, as Villa draw with Arsenal. Bournemouth beating Chelsea. Everton and Forest in a 0-0 draw. City beating the Sunderland team. Newcastle beating this Burnley team. Tottenham and Brentford in a 1-1 draw. Leeds getting beat by Liverpool there, just about. Brighton beating West Ham. Fulham, so again, I think they're going to struggle against Palace team. Palace win that game. And then United beating Wolves there. The game at 15. Yep, we see how the table's looking now. And United now in 3rd place in the table, which will take 15 games, which will be very nice to see there. Liverpool have also crept up at the same time. Bournemouth also on 28 points. Palace just falling behind that. Brighton are behind that. Sunderland still doing well for themselves on 23 points, but they had a few tough games in there mixed in with the Liverpool and City game going for them, both away from home. Well, City, yeah, both away from home. I see Burnley, West Ham and Wolves on the relegation zone still, where you kind of expect them to be with how they've played this season, but I think they've still got time to turn things around, and I think other teams will still have a poor season ahead of them. And it's going to be a lot of battles ahead, as Chelsea beat Everton 2-0. Liverpool get back to winning ways of winning against Brighton. Burnley with a 1-0 win over Fulham, and that's massive. That is massive for them. Arsenal beating this Wolves team, and Sunderland getting a massive win over Newcastle, a massive win. Same as Palace getting a massive win over City there, and Forest getting a big draw with Spurs, whilst West Ham draw with Villa, and Brentford beating Leeds, and United beating Bournemouth. A big win at home there. Newcastle beating this Chelsea team. An exciting one. Bournemouth beating Burnley there. Brighton beating the Sunderland team. I think, Sunderland team are a good team, but I think Brighton can get better of them, and it is a long way to travel down. City beating this West Ham team. Ooh, Brentford and Wolves in a 2-2 draw. Spurs beating Liverpool. Everton holding Arsenal to a 0-0 draw. Leeds being tough at home with a 2-2 draw with Palace there, and then Villa beating United, ending this unbeaten run that we are currently on, and then Fulham in a 1-1 draw with Forest. United then back week after that beating Newcastle. Forest getting beat by City. Arsenal beating Brighton. Brentford and Bournemouth in a 3-3 draw. Burnley and Everton in a 1-1 draw. Liverpool beating this Wolves team. West Ham with a big win over Fulham there. Huge for them, that is. Chelsea beating Villa. Sunderland beating Leeds. Trying to do well for themselves in the season there. And Palace beating Spurs. Burnley holding Newcastle to a 1-1 draw, whilst Chelsea beat Bournemouth. Forest beating Everton. West Ham beating Brighton, which is a massive win for them there. Arsenal beating Villa, big win for them. United beating Wolves. Palace beating Fulham. A lot of clean sheets happening there, as Liverpool beat Leeds. Sunderland in a 1-1 draw with City, and then Brentford beating Spurs. 19 games in now, and Arsenal are top of the league. United and Liverpool still level on points. Crystal Palace just behind them on 35. We see Bournemouth on 32 points there, Chelsea on 31, Sunderland now on 30 points half through the season, which we would be loving. Brentford on 28 points, Brighton on 28, Spurs, Villa and Newcastle sat just behind them. Whilst Everton, Forest, West Ham, Burnley, Leeds, Fulham and Wolves can all see themselves getting dragged into that relegation battle there. Villa winning against Forest there to try and secure where their season's going. Wolves with a 2-1 win there on the start of the new year. Bournemouth beating Arsenal at the start of the year as well, is a big win for them there. United beating Leeds. Everton with a 2-1 win over Brentford there. Fulham getting beat by Liverpool. Newcastle with a win over Palace, big for them that is. Sunderland getting beat by Spurs there, and a City win there against Chelsea. West Ham beating Forest, big for them. Bournemouth beating Spurs. You see Crystal Palace beating this Villa team. Brentford beating Sunderland. Yep. Everton with a 1-0 win over Wolves. We're going to see Fulham getting a 2-1 win over Chelsea, upsetting Chelsea there as City win their game. United beating Burnley. Newcastle beating Leeds, and Arsenal beating Liverpool, as you'd expect them to do. Sunderland and Palace in a 0-0 affair. We're going to see Villa beating this Everton team, Brighton beating this Bournemouth team, Chelsea beating Brentford there at home, Liverpool beating Burnley. We're going to see Leeds with a win over Fulham at home there. United beating City, huge for them that. Arsenal winning their game there. Spurs beating West Ham, and Wolves getting a win over Newcastle, be big for their fight to stay up. Bournemouth with a win there over Liverpool. We're going to see Palace and Chelsea in a 2-1 win for Palace. We're going to see Arsenal beating United. We're going to see Brentford beating Forest. Burnley getting beat by Spurs. Everton beating Leeds, as you expect them to do. Fulham beating Brighton. City beating this Wolves team. As you know, they seem down and out, but will they stay that way? Newcastle winning there, and then West Ham drawing with Sunderland. So 15 games to go, and Arsenal 7 points clear of City as things stand, but still 15 games to go. A lot can change there. United sat comfortably in third, with Liverpool, Palace and Bournemouth all sat on the only teams above 40 points right now. Spurs, Chelsea, Brentford, Brighton, Newcastle, Aston Villa, Sunderland are the chasing pack. Everton are doing a bit better now, and they've drifted themselves away from this relegation zone fight with West Ham, Leeds, Fulham, Forest, Burnley and Wolves still at the bottom of the table with 15 games to go. Can the Great Escape happen? We'll wait and see, as Sunderland beat Burnley to keep their season on the rise. Villa beating Brentford, Brighton beating Everton. Chelsea putting 4 past West Ham is really poor from West Ham. Liverpool putting 3 past Newcastle. Leeds putting a few goals past Arsenal, and taking them close to that 15 goal mark where they don't want to go. United beating Fulham. We're going to see Forest and Palace in a 2-2 draw there, in a heated affair. Spurs beating City, and then Wolves getting a 2-1 win over Bournemouth, as the Great Escape can still be on. Bournemouth and Villa in a 1-1 draw. Brighton beating Palace there. Nah, it's going to be another 0-0, I think. Another 0-0 there, actually. Arsenal beating Sunderland, getting a bit of revenge for what happened last weekend. Burnley getting a 1-0 win over West Ham. Fulham getting that 2-1 win over Everton there. Liverpool and City drawing. Leeds beating Forest. United beating Spurs. You can see Newcastle beat Brentford, and Wolves and Chelsea draw there. So it's going to add spice to them. Sunderland beating Liverpool, massive from that is. Villa and Brighton a 3-3 draw. Crystal Palace beating Burnley. We're going to see Brentford getting a 2-2 draw out of Arsenal as well. You know, showing a tough team. They are a tough team to beat. Chelsea winning their game against Leeds. Everton and Bournemouth. 2-1 Everton. City beating Fulham. We're going to see Forest beating Wolves there. We're going to see Spurs beating Newcastle, and then West Ham getting beat by United. So we're calculating getting game 28. In a second, Sunderland beating Fulham. You know, pushing on for how their season can go. Real well there. Chris Palace with a win over Wolves there. Brentford beating Brighton. Chelsea beating Burnley. Everton holding United to a 1-1 draw. City beating Newcastle. Forest holding Liverpool to a 2-2 draw, whilst Spurs beat Arsenal in a massive win there for them, to try and push Arsenal's hopes down for the title. Bournemouth beating Sunderland. We see Brighton beating Forest. Arsenal then the week after responded with a 3-0 win over Chelsea. Burnley a 1-1 draw at Brentford. Fulham beating Spurs. That's a massive game for them, that is. Liverpool beating West Ham. Leeds getting beat by City. United drawing with Palace. We can see Newcastle beating Everton, and Wolves drawing with Villa with 10 games to go now. United still sat in third place. Palace doing really well for themselves. They lost 3 games in the whole season. A lot of draws got them where they're at though. I said City are still 7 points on the top with 10 games to go. They could still catch up, but I don't know if they will. Sunderland ahead of Newcastle right now as things stand. Newcastle having a really poor season there. Wolves, Burnley, Leeds, all the relegation zone, but 10 games to go. A lot can still change. Obviously, all the way up to Palace could still technically get relegated through mathematic possibilities. Bournemouth beating Brentford there. Villa beating Chelsea. We're going to see Brighton beating Arsenal. Another upset for Arsenal there. It's not. They're going to pile up, and it's not going to look nice for them. Fulham beating West Ham. Leeds beating Sunderland there, as City do try and close that gap. Newcastle beat United. Spurs beating Palace, and then Wolves getting beat by Liverpool. Sunderland the week after beating Brighton there. Big win for them that. Crystal Palace beating Leeds. Arsenal beating Everton. We're going to see Brentford beating Wolves. Burnley with a 1-1 draw with Bournemouth. Chelsea beating Newcastle. Liverpool beating this Spurs team. United beating Villa. Forest beating Fulham as they try and get out, and then see in that one. We're going to see Bournemouth beating United. Villa beating West Ham. Brighton upsetting Liverpool as well there. A 0-0 affair between Everton and Chelsea. Fulham beating Burnley to try and secure their way out. Leeds beating Brentford. City beating Palace. Newcastle letting that anger out against the Sunderland team, and probably overtaking the table at the same time, as Wolves get hammered by Arsenal there. Sunderland the week after a 2-2 draw against Spurs, as Palace beat Newcastle. Arsenal beating Bournemouth. Brentford beating Everton. Burnley with a 1-1 draw with Brighton. Chelsea beating City. Actually, running City will run into that one. Liverpool winning that game. United putting 5 past Leeds. Forest beating Villa, and then West Ham beating Wolves. Things are heating up right now. Villa beating Sunderland. We're going to see Palace beating West Ham. Brentford beating Fulham. We're going to see Chelsea United draw. Everton and Liverpool draw. Leeds beating Wolves. City beating Arsenal. Newcastle beating Bournemouth. Forest beating Burnley, and Spurs beating Brighton. So with 5 games to go, there's now only 1 point between City and Arsenal. With 5 games to go, Arsenal will be shaking in their boots. Top 4, United and Liverpool are both there. Crystal Palace sat not far behind though with only 5 losses. Spurs doing really well for themselves. Bournemouth, Villa, Chelsea, Brighton make up the rest of the top half. Newcastle and Brentford sat just outside of it, but Sunderland can also close the gap on it as well. Wolves still in the relegation zone. Wolves still bottom of the relegation zone, but Burnley and West Ham could still make their fight out as well. All the way up to Everton are not safe yet, but they will be in a couple games. You know, there's still a lot to be pushing on to. We'll calculate again in game week 30, after game week 36, as Bournemouth beat Leeds there, Sunderland beating Forest, Brighton beating Chelsea, Arsenal with a big win over Newcastle there, Burnley getting beat by City, Fulham the 2-1 win over Villa, massive for them that is. Liverpool and Palace drawing, whilst United beat Brentford. West Ham with a win over Everton, and Wolves upsetting Spurs. Could they? Will they? Can they? Bournemouth beating Crystal Palace. Villa beating Spurs as well. You know, bit falling off there. Arsenal beating Fulham. Brentford beating West Ham. Chelsea beating Forest. Everton holding City to a 0-0 draw is not going to be good for City at all. Leeds beating Burnley. United beating Liverpool. Newcastle beating Brighton, and then Wolves getting a win over Sunderland. Back-to-back wins for Wolves there. Back-to-back wins as Sunderland get a draw with United the week after, and Brighton draw with Wolves. Could that be the end of it? Could that be the end of it for Wolves? Palace beating Everton. You know, Everton still struggling to try and get out of this as Burnley draw with Villa. Fulham beat Bournemouth. You know, they're trying to secure their way out of it, and I think they probably have with that. City beating Brentford. Forest holding Newcastle to a draw. Spurs beating Leeds to get back on track for themselves, and Arsenal beating West Ham. They are now only 3 points ahead of City going into the last 2 games of the season. Palace also sat, you know, just outside the top spots. They should have a space confirmed now, but Bournemouth's space isn't confirmed either. All the way up to Brighton, even Chelsea, even Newcastle could catch up to Bournemouth still. Wolves are down, sadly, right at the end there. Burnley are definitely down as well. West Ham could still stay up. Fulham, Leeds and Forest could also get entangled in that with them on the last days here. Bournemouth getting beat by City as Villa beat Liverpool. Arsenal putting 4 past Burnley to try and secure their hopes. Brentford beating Crystal Palace. Chelsea beating Spurs there. We see Everton with a big win over Sunderland there for themselves. Leeds beating Brighton, trying to secure what they can. United beating Forest. Newcastle beating West Ham, and Wolves beating Fulham. I mean, it's too little too late, but they can still throw someone else under the bus. Chelsea getting beat there. Brighton beating United, because it means more. Palace and Arsenal drawing on the last day. Burnley getting beat by Wolves. Wolves have had a great end to the season, but it means nothing. Fulham beating Newcastle there, as Liverpool beat Brentford to try and secure their place. City beat Villa. Forest draw with Bournemouth on the last day, whilst Spurs beat Everton and West Ham get a win over Leeds. What does that do? It means West Ham still get relegated. The goal difference was not enough. Forest do survive, Leeds survive, Fulham survive, and yeah, Wolves were literally just a win away from being able to stay up. A win away from being able to stay up, which is crazy to talk about. United finishing third in the table, which isn't too bad considering how the past couple of seasons have gone. Liverpool sat 4th on 68 points, and Crystal Palace on 65 points, with only 7 losses on the board as well. It's not too bad for themselves at all. Spurs, you know, turn things around, sat in 60 points. Bournemouth on 59, Villa there on 57, Brighton on 56, Chelsea finishing 10th on 55 points is very, very unlucky for them. I mean, it's just a close table. Level on points with Newcastle as well, who finished in the bottom half on 55 points, while Brentford have a great season, 54 points, sat in 12th. Sunderland, fantastic season for how they come, 52 points and sat in 13th place is insane, with a big gap between Everton as well. That is me on the video, guys. If you like the video, please like to see more, subscribe, click on the button. I do catch you on the next one. Cheers, guys.